back in the day, like I loved you how I wanted to be loved. Like physical touch, everybody wants that. She wants to be hugged. She wants to be kissed on. She want me to be all over her.
And they'll be like, "Can you back up?"
What? You don't love me? Or you don't want me? All right, whatever. And I would actually get like upset or aggravated by it. What's happening, people?
Hey y'all, happy 2021.
2021.
Okay, we are excited to be back. We took a little holiday break.
Much needed.
Much needed.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. I would say, yeah.
So much.
All right, but we're back.
We're back.
So we are kicking it off today, talking about something that actually was brought to us by somebody. Love languages.
5 love languages. What was said to us was they were interested in understanding more about the love languages and how we incorporated them into our relationship. So we'll just dive in, tell a couple stories of how we learned what they were, and then relearn what it actually meant and
how they change, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll jump right into it. We're not going to spend a whole bunch of time talking about what the love languages are. I mean, they're pretty common now, so we won't spend a ton of time talking about them. But for us, when we first found out about the love languages, that was pretty early in our dating still. So we had just actually became full-on adults in adulting life, and that was one of the things that came up for us, like thinking about how to make our relationship better, no longer being in college, but actually having careers and thinking around what does it mean to build a lasting foundation for a relationship. And so we looked into our love languages. We took one of those like little cheesy tests. I mean, there's a ton of them out there. So we took one of those little cheesy tests.
What's your love language?
And then I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure that, you know, when we took our test, like it was pretty clear to the other person that like, yep, that's your love language. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So Donovan's were physical touch.
Yep, that's my number one, physical touch. As with most men. A lot of men. I won't say most men.
Right. Like putting that stereotype out there. But one of the things that really stood out about physical touch was that it had been something that we talked about a lot in our relationship, and just thinking through, I had no idea what it would become later in our relationship, or like the impact that it would have, like really knowing that and being able to navigate tension and conflict that came up, which we'll talk more about. But
yeah. And then, I mean, same with my number 2, quality time, which is still remains true. Both of my top 2 from back then are still my top 2 now. And what about yours? What were yours?
You don't remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, so what was it?
Words of affirmation was your number 1. And then acts of service was your number 2.
Not back then.
Not back then. Acts of service.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So what we should probably do is tell the people what the 5 are.
Right. Because that'll help you figure out
which word.
Yeah, we know. All right.
No, so quality time was your number 2.
So you got quality time, physical touch,
words of affirmation, acts of service, and gifts.
Yep. So yes, so quality time was my other one back then. But yes, it has changed since having a kid. And that's something that I know we learned about, that your love languages can change within the phases of life and the seasons that you're in. They typically go back to what your original love language was, but they may shift and change like in the seasons. So yeah.
But I remain the same.
Okay. Or maybe you're not pulling your weight.
What does that even mean? Wow. That hurt.
I didn't mean to hurt you.
Like understanding what the 5 are, right? Listing them, but
what do they mean?
Yeah, what do they really mean for
so
us?
When I think about physical touch, I think about how for you, like, it was very important to have that touch, right? Like even just now when you're like, I'm hurt and I put my hand there, like that's a piece of physical touch.
Yep.
And it came up for us a lot when thinking around as we named in our engagement video, right, that I didn't want to have sex period of time that we were engaged. And so there was that lacking there that really built a lot of tension in our relationship
Mm-hmm.
because, here's someone who deeply shows love and receives love through physical touch. And now a key component of that physical touch that was once there is no longer there. And so, I mean, I think that
And
really.
yeah, it made it hard because not only the actual physical act of sex, but all the things that lead up to it are different forms of physical touch. But when you're trying to stay away from sex, you refrain from
Mhm.
those things as well that may not actually be sexual acts, but can only build on themselves to lead to sex. So you try to stay away from them, which means now all physical touch is
Super limited.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that made it difficult, which was a learning experience for us. Like even
Yeah.
learning how when we're not having sex, what are the other types of touches that still will feel like I'm being loved.
Yep. Yep. And then that goes into quality time, right? That was your
Mm-hmm.
number two. And so thinking through intentional time together, I think for us, that looks like putting our phones away, actually like having time where we're just like zoned in and zoomed into each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that can look different for different relationships too,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So that's why I named like that quality time is really just the intentional time that you have with your partner.
And for me, mine is more so the attention piece of it.
Okay.
Right? It's like
So not watching TV on my phone.
exactly like I
Okay.
want like whatever we're doing, I want us to be in tune together so we can respond to certain things. I don't want to see something and then be ready to talk to you about it and you
I mean,
right
okay.
when we don't have any distractions.
Yep.
It allows for so much more connection to happen. And so for me, when I think of quality time, that's how I define it. But some people may define it differently. There may be certain things that they see as their way of achieving that quality time.
Yeah, because I mean, I think back to when quality time was in my top two. It, I mean, I'm not gonna say that the phones bothered me or didn't bother me, but I think they were more so an afterthought for me. And it was like, oh yeah, like if we're chilling on the couch together, I feel connected to you. And I think part of that was because we didn't live together then, right? Like,
yeah.
When it was in my top two, we, like I said, had just started our careers, had just started adulting. So honestly, a lot of the time, like, I wanted to just like be in that space together, just be there. And so if that meant, hey, like I had a really rough day, I actually don't want to talk a whole lot. Quality time, let's just like being together. So yeah, I think the phones really were like an afterthought, but became more of a thing for us to be intentional around as we became, married and together all the time.
All the time, exactly.
Especially in quarantine.
Yes, it's so easy to get like tuned into the world around you.
Yep.
Right. This phone, it drives me crazy. Oh my goodness, it drives me crazy. I think quality time on the low might be my number one now as I'm thinking about it. So I have changed.
Look at you.
I was gonna say that Jaheim song.
Listen up.
Yeah, because I can't remember how it goes anyway.
Let's just let that go.
By the end of the
all right.
I feel the melody coming. I feel it.
All right, so we did physical touch and quality time. So now let's go over to words of affirmation. And so for me, I really appreciate that, just appreciation that people can share through words. Donovan loves to write, and from writing a book and having specific pieces in there about me, and then to even if it's just like a long text, like this morning when you sent me a letter, like those words mean a lot, and I really appreciate those because sometimes I think in this season specifically where you're just running and gunning all the time, it feels like stuff can go unnoticed. And so I think when you actually like hear those words of affirmation where somebody's like, yep, like I see you and I appreciate everything that you're doing, it's like, oh yeah, people see this. This is happening for a reason. And not that you do any of that stuff for other people, but it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to be appreciated.
Yep.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one of the key things about words of affirmation. And I think some of the love languages sometimes like you be like, oh snap, like I don't really want to say I like that one.
Like gifts. Nobody wants to say gifts as their love language.
Yeah, but I mean, it's you got to appreciate however you appreciate yourself in other things. Like I
Mm-hmm.
100% like my love language for myself is gifts. Like
Mm-hmm.
I will buy myself a magazine, a cookbook, and be like, "Girl, you deserve that. Like get that." But even though words of affirmation is my number one, it's way less likely for me to give myself those words of affirmation. Yeah,
Words of affirmation is still your number one?
I mean, I think they're probably like pretty tied.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're like probably pretty
I've
tied.
been focusing on so much on services.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if they might like change day to day, but no, I think they're like pretty.
I thought it was like words of affirmation was here at one point in time, and then like acts of service just shoom
No,
here.
no,
But
no.
it's like here.
Yeah, yeah.
I like doing these videos.
Because you be
Because I be learning, I be learning stuff.
yeah, I mean,
Like,
I think when it comes down to words of affirmation, right? Like, I think all the same things live out in all of the love languages.
mm-hmm.
Like the word intentionality just like keeps coming
Yeah.
up, and so I think you have to be intentional and thoughtful, no matter what your partner's love language is or what your own love language is. Like I mentioned earlier, like loving yourself in the way that you actually
Mm-hmm.
like appreciate love languages, I think is like really important. And 2020 taught me a lot around how to at least be conscious and thinking about that for myself. If I love words of affirmation, why am I not giving myself words of affirmation?
That's the yeah, that's good.
So, give yourself praise for what it is that you're doing and operating around that. And so I think that's where like sometimes words of affirmation can get a bad rap too. Like people just think you want to hear praise, 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 praise,
Mm-hmm.
praise. No, like I don't like no superficial praise. So all that like you're so great. Great at what?
What? I was going to say
Great at
that
what?
same thing because you mentioned that to me. You talked about specificity
Mm-hmm.
around the words of affirmation. Like, okay, you want to say something positive, but like, what is the real thing that you want them to get from what you're saying? So I've been trying to be more intentional, as you mentioned. Like that's the word intentionality about how can I say this specific thing, not try to be so poetic and
Mm-hmm.
artistic with it, even though I know sometimes that is needed. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, what is a time and place for everything, right?
yeah.
There is a time where you like do want those comparisons. You do want that like really deep thought, um, and intentionality that comes there. But then there are other times where it's like I look crazy with this bun on top of my head that probably been here for 3 days. I think I brushed my teeth this morning. And then somebody's like, you know what? You are a great mom. Like, I really see how you are trying to teach Brooke X, Y, and Z. I see how you are trying to do this, this, and this, and you're balancing X, Y, and Z. And in that moment, like, that's the word of affirmation you
Mm-hmm.
needed. And so, I think it's like just like I said, going back to that word intentionality,
Yeah.
but like really being able to um, hit it when people need it, and then also like be super genuine and authentic with it, and taking it to that deeper level. Like nobody want to just hear you killed it. Killed it at what? What did I kill it
I
at?
got to stop doing that too. Like, kill that, John.
But you know what helped me a lot with that was teaching,
Mm-hmm.
because that was like the biggest thing as a teacher. Like you don't just tell a kid like great job. When I would be writing my feedback, like I would be very intentional around it, where it's like, yep, like this was very thought out. This piece here, you can x,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that was something that really helped me think about how do you go beyond the superficial when you're giving people praise or affirmation. And so yeah, I mean, it took practice though.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I'm learning now is to, when I think of it, either write it down or say it in that moment. That's how that text this morning happened. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. For some reason, I can't sleep, but you were on my mind. It was just like a bunch of random thoughts of just like how amazing I think you are, how beautiful I think our relationship is, and you was knocked out. Like I think I might have tried to say something to you. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get these down. Like I'll text it to her. She'll see it when she wakes up. And that's something that I want to get better at because I miss out on a lot of opportunities where I think something positive about you, and just don't say it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I have to be more intentional about that as well, especially now that I know they're like this, right? Now
A
that I
lot
know acts of
closer.
service
Yes.
and words of affirmation are closer, um, and I have to, and we, may need to just continue to do inventory on ourselves. Like we're growing at a rapid pace
Yep.
with all the things that are happening in our life. We need to check in, like, okay, where are you
Yeah.
with this? I think that's a good conversation to have. Now, what I never thought about, and I'm like working through this right now, is because I know what your top two are. I don't necessarily think so much about the other ones. Do you feel like anything is lacking, not being loved primarily, or rarely at all through those languages?
So what's interesting, I think, for us is I have two and you have the other two.
So we
And
all,
so,
yeah.
yes, I feel like because of that, like we both have to be intentional around the connections. And so, what I noticed for me is like it's very easy to love somebody in the way that you want to be loved. And so, you have to think intentionally about loving them in another way. So, I think that's where it's like, oh, yeah, like the other two kind of automatically happen because you can love someone easily the way you want to be loved.
Yep.
And so even when you're not thinking intentionally, that's going to come out for the other person.
Yep.
And then you have to like reset. At least I do. I'm not going to speak for other people. I have to reset and be like, yep, so have you been intentional about hugging, kissing, touching him on the back, just those little things. Like, have you been intentional about that today? And I think it's because, like for people who really engage in that way, like who you love physical touch, it's not even a second thought to be like, oh, this, or hey, let me hold your hand. Whereas like when physical touch is not at the top of your list, like
you don't think about it.
I just don't think about it. Yeah, so
yeah, it wasn't a physical toucher.
No.
It's cold.
Okay.
I remember when I thought acts of service for you was, okay, tell me what you need, and then I'll make sure it happens.
Right? And I'm like, bro, that's more work. By the time I finish telling you what I need you to do, I could have did it.
I've had to learn how to think like that, right? Like that was important for me just now because that is going to direct my intentionality around how I treat you, right? If I want to, I wake up and like, man, I really haven't been doing anything special for Whitney. The first thing I think of is usually acts of service. Like as of recently, like what can I do for her? That's going to make her feel special, make her feel heard, make her feel noticed, and also take some burden away from her with all the things that you do on a daily basis.
Which I mean, I think that's the big thing when it comes down to acts of service. Right? Like I appreciate when it's like, hey, you stay and get some rest. I'm gonna watch Brooke for the next 2 hours. For me that means a lot because even if I'm not sleeping, it's like, okay, well, like I can get some work done in the morning versus like trying to get everything done in nap time and after and all these little random windows and spurts that I feel like I have to utilize sometimes. And then sometimes it's like, oh, I can actually just like look up the random stuff I need to look up.
I was about to say you could scroll on IG without getting your phone deboed.
Yo, toddlers be deboing your phone.
Brooke is a bully.
Medium. But at the same time, also being able to really know your partner and anticipate stuff has been helpful, right? Like you will be like, oh, okay, you're probably going to need a massage in like 3 days. And then you'll be like, hey babe, do you want a massage tonight? I'm like, yes, I needed that. So yes, I mean, I think there is like intentionality that goes into it, but also like clear communication and transparency helps.
I think the combination of the two is perfect, and I had to really learn how to anticipate it, and just like be more observant, right? I always talk about how I study you, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But I mean, I really have to in order to be good. Acts of services is kind of difficult to be good at,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the, as I'm learning as well, like as parents, like there's some things that I do that I think I'm helping, but I'm not actually really helping, or at least the effort that it takes isn't equal to the benefit
Well, I
that it
mean,
gives you.
I think the other thing that's hard about acts of service, right, is like what is important in that moment can shift and change, right?
Hmm.
Like even if I think about, so I don't know if y'all care about like New Year's superstitions and stuff like that, but like I don't know. I be following them and listening to them at least. And so this past New Year's, we were getting things together. And like in my head, I'm just like, okay, like dishes can't be in the sink and we can't be folding no clothes or washing no clothes. Like, so these are the main important things. And like Donovan is just like unloading the dishwasher, putting it up, boom, scoot this cup over here. And I'm like, it's 11:40, like we got to move faster, faster, faster. And so like in my head it was just like that's not the important thing I need you to be doing, like I need you to be doing this other thing. But I also didn't feel like it was something I should have been getting upset about, so I was also like, "Eh,"
Hmm.
having this like internal battle, I feel like. And so I think that's the piece where I was like, the transparency and communication piece is like
Yeah.
really important as well too, because here I am having this whole internal battle, like, man, if you don't put that cup up there, but like
And
it's
me
not
thinking,
important.
yeah, me thinking, oh, this is actually important that we have the dishes placed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm doing my part, check me out, I got her, let me get these dishes together, right? And then when I saw the urgency, I was like, oh, I'm doing the wrong thing. let me let me let me change gears.
And ultimately, like, I had to like check myself. Was like, girl, you gonna say your prayers and you gonna believe in God, and if you gonna be washing dishes all year, you gonna be
You're
washing
gonna be
dishes
doing them
all year. Like,
regardless. You're gonna be doing them regardless.
whatever.
Like for me, like I was saying, when we went into it, like I don't. I'd rather us get to like that 80, 85% mark and be cooling going into the year, because I also believe just as you're rushing, stressing yourself to get it done, like that behavior will follow you as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And like I didn't want that to happen either.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I thought it was a good check. Just like, hey, like, what about this other aspect, right? And I think it goes back into our love languages, right?
mhm.
Like, I'm here like this acts of service, so this service has to get done.
Yeah,
And like you're like, oh, this quality time. But
has
like
yeah.
we need to like be together and like
Uh-huh.
be spending this energy and this just like focusing in this different way. And so I mean, I think that's what's really interesting about the love languages, right? Like you can weave them back into
Pretty much everything.
all of these different
Mhm.
aspects of your
Uh,
relationship.
Hopefully, this was helpful for you. We've been
Yeah.
enjoying these conversations. I think love languages are super important. Really understanding how you love yourself, and then how that extends to the people that you love as well.
Yeah. So drop a comment if you found a gem in there that you may want to use.
Yep. And holla at us later
From the
from
Williams.
with love.